Hello everyone, my name is Noah Raven and welcome to the Xander Zone. In today's episode, we'll be discussing Midnight Motorist and specifically my take on the theories that have been floating around about this minigame in Pizzeria Simulator. So before we get into it, I'll show you how this video will be laid out so it's easier for you to follow. First, we will give a recap on Midnight Motorist from our very special guest Cryonide, and then the basis of my theory on it. Next, we will talk about evidence for my theory to try to help us build a story and timeline of events. We will then talk about the issues with the said evidence to try to take apart any pieces of evidence that I have thought of. Next, we'll tell the story of Midnight Motorist, then the issues with that said story to see how well it holds up. Then my final thoughts, just giving a basis on how much I like the theory and if there's anything I'd change about it. Though, as always, if you enjoy this video, please hit that subscribe button, as we have a goal of 2,000 subs by the end of the month. While you're at it, comment down below your thoughts, theories, disagreements, or really anything in the whole wide world. Just remember to keep it kind, calm, respectful, and that's just a theory. Also, make sure to check out Cryonide's channel and show them some love and tell them that I sent you. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Midnight Motorist is still heavily debated in the FNAF theory space to this day. To really understand why that is, let's take a step back and talk about what Midnight Motorist is and what we directly see in it. Midnight Motorist is a minigame that you can play in Pizzeria Simulator. The base game is pretty simple, but if you interact with a not-so-hidden passage partway through, you find yourself in a wooded area that you can drive through. Let's go over the noteworthy things we can find in this part of the minigame. First off, we have an area called Juniors. To this day, we still don't actually know what this is. It could be a Freddy's, a Fredbear's, a random bar, or anything else, really. We've never been given much to go off of here. If you interact with the green figure standing outside, he tells you that you can't be here and asks you to not make things harder than they have to be. That's all the Juniors has to offer us. Next up is this mound of dirt that you can find if you drive off-road again. You can't interact with it, and walking up to it doesn't seem to do anything. As for what it is, well, honestly, it could be anything. A gravesite, a twisted animatronic, or maybe just some marked spot on the ground for any number of reasons, really. Finally, we have the house. This is where we get almost all of the lore clues that can be found in the entire minigame. But you go inside, the first person you see is someone sitting in a chair watching TV. If you talk to them, they'll tell you to leave him alone and that he's had a rough day. Completely disregarding their only request of us, we can advance onward and start banging on someone's door and demanding that they open up. When this doesn't work, we loop around to the back of the house to see if we can find another way inside. But when we get there, you can see a shattered window and an animatronic footprint. You can't interact with either of these things, but if you walk up to where the footprints lead, your character says, "Run off to that place again. He'll be sorry when he gets back." And that's it. The minigame that's been shrouded in mystery for over half a decade gives us exactly 0 hints as to what it might be telling us. But maybe with all the knowledge we've gained since the minigame came out, there's an answer to be found that we never considered before. Well, I'm gonna send things back over to Raven so he can get into that. You guys take it easy.
Thank you, Cryonide. Well, I personally think we are playing as William Afton after the night he murdered Charlotte. When he comes home, Michael's sitting on the couch and telling him to leave his brother alone. Even though Michael's a jerk, he's still a brother. Though once William realizes that the crying child, Michael's brother, wasn't answering the door, he was going to enter through the window. Now noticing that his child is gone, now this place he ran off to was Charlotte's murder scene. Now where you think this was Fredbear's or someplace else, that's up to you. However, I believe that these footprints belong to none other than the Mimic. No, not that Mimic. Yeah, that one. The lion suit. Now, why do I think it was the Mimic that did this? Well, I think the Mimic witnessed the murder and went to get help from the only people it really knew, Crying Child or Michael Afton. Though, to not scare them, it wore this suit, explaining the footprint, and it took the Crying Child to try to help Charlotte. However, this then traumatized the Crying Child, causing him to be scared of animatronics, later influencing his nightmares, which we see in FNAF 4. Now, if you'd like to see my theory on FNAF 4, you can see it now in the top right corner of the screen. Though, now that we have the basis of the theory laid out, what's the evidence? Okay, so for the evidence, we're going to kind of gloss over who we play as and focus more so on the Mimic. Though, I'll explain why we play as William real quick. The reason for this is that the game in the code is called Later That Night, implying that something important happened earlier that night. The next is who's in the house. There's obviously this yellow man, a dude sitting in front of a TV, and a child that isn't there at the moment. Now, this dude on the chair is probably Michael, since we know Michael loves to watch TV. Now, Crying Child just leaving isn't like him, you say, and to that I say, yeah, you're right. though we know that the crying child will always listen to his best friends, and at this time, Fredbear was one of those friends. Now we get into the mimic, and I hear you saying, but the lion suit isn't Fredbear, and to this I say you're also right. However, even though this may not be relevant, I still think it's true regardless, as I was once a child. This image from way back says, what's seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. So look at the lion suit. You have feet that would be similar to Fredbear, and exactly like this footprint, with a line before the toes, with 3 toes, and a yellow color palette. Though, now imagine this thing in the shadows of the night. Yeah, crying child thought this was Fredbear, when in reality it was the mimic, or just someone wearing this suit. So, when this thing directed him to Charlotte's murder, yeah, I think the crying child would probably be pretty scared. Though, how can I confirm that the crying child thought of this lion suit as Fredbear? Well, design hunting, here we come. Look at the lion's stomach. It has a rip in it like a mouth. You know who else has a mouth in their stomach? Nightmare Fredbear does. You know who else has 3 toes for feet? Nightmare Fredbear also does. Plus with a gigantic mouth and possibly some red glowing eyes. Yeah, I'd say this kid genuinely thought that this was a nightmarish version or just an evil version of Fredbear. Though, there's a major problem right now. Why did the mimic want to lure the crying child to Charlotte's body? Well, here we go. We know the mimic knew the Aftons in some capacity, knowing Mrs. Afton, William, crying child, Michael, and Elizabeth Afton. Though I don't think he was taught who they were, rather he always knew who they were. Though how could he know in the past and not be taught it? Mimic was only ever around Edwin in the book, so how could he have ever met the Aftons? Well, for now my interpretation is that the mimic is Henry's creation, meaning that the mimic might have been meant for Sammy Emily. So if and when Sammy dies, either he possesses the mimic or possibly Mrs. Afton possesses the mimic, though I have less evidence for Mrs. Afton than Sammy. So with Sammy, we know he would have been near the mimic at the time of passing, meaning that it's totally possible he could have possessed the mimic. Then witnessing the murder of Charlotte, the mimic, aka Sammy in this version, would have gone to get his friend the crying child for help. Though to not scare him, he wore a lion costume to convince the crying child to follow him. Also, if you're saying they didn't know each other, odds are they had to, even if it was Edwin. Their fathers, with Henry's side, were business partners, and well, there's no way that Edwin and Henry's kids never cross paths. Though for Mrs. Afton, I feel it's just a fact of knowing the Aftons and putting her somewhere here. Otherwise, there's like no evidence for her possessing the mimic. So for the rest of the theory, we will go with Sammy. Though if you can all find evidence for Mrs. Afton, I may make a part 2 for this. Though to recap that whole subsection, the reason why the mimic would have lured the crying child to Charlotte's body is because the mimic is possessed by Sammy, and Sammy, not knowing what to do, went to the crying child's house for help. Though if you don't really like the idea of Sammy, you can just replace it with Edwin's son, and it still pretty much works. So let's get right into the issues with this said evidence. Okay, so let's get into the issues with the evidence I brought up. First is Sammy Emily. Currently, we have no evidence of Sammy existing in the games, as well if there even is anything possessing the mimic in the first place. Next is the mimic knowing about the Aftons instead of being taught about them. For this, honestly, I feel it's mostly true. However, the biggest issue with this is the mimic not knowing proper grammar and security breach, meaning that either it went its whole life just as a pure robot, only learning later yet knowing the Aftons, or it was taught the Aftons flat out. Though I do have a counterpoint for this, which is memory loss of the spirit possessing it, which in FNAF is totally possible, since the FNAF movie has memory loss of the spirits as a thing in it. Next is Mimic even seeing the murder of Charlotte, as obviously this does ride on the Mimic being there and already on the loose, which at the moment we don't know. So I'm hoping Secret of the Mimic will shed some light on this. So otherwise I don't really see any issues with the lion suit, as again this also relies on the Mimic being there in the first place, so same issue as before. With the crying child being scared of Fredbears because of this lion suit though, it's also the same issue. If the mimic was there, then yeah, I'd say it's likely. Though if the mimic wasn't, then yeah, it probably wasn't this suit or the mimic in the first place. So overall, I feel the biggest issue is just piecing the mimic to be there. Otherwise, I feel it's a solid basis for a theory. So with that in mind, let's get into the story of Midnight Motorist, assuming it is canon. Okay, so let's get into the story of Midnight Motorist, assuming it is canon. Now remember, this is just a theory, and this section is meant to help see what the story of FNAF would be if this was canon. Henry Emily made the mimic to watch after his son, Sammy, as he was just too busy to be watching his kids at the time. However, one day Sammy passed away while under the watch of the mimic. For a while, Henry was pretty upset and went into a depressed rage when the mimic kept mimicking his son, not knowing that it actually wasn't mimicking anything. Rather, it was still his son. Henry dismantled this endoskeleton and left it behind. Sammy, seeing a side of his father he never knew existed, was scared and hated Fazbear Entertainment for this. So after hiding out in the factory for a while, he eventually decided to go out into the world in his many costumes. One day, while the mimic was looking for his sister Charlotte, he stumbled across a new location, Fredbear's Family Diner. He stayed here for a while, trying to see if his sister would show up, as it was a location associated with his father. However, the day Charlotte did arrive was the day Charlotte was murdered by William. The mimic was able to witness it all while hiding in the tree lines and panicked, thinking of what to do. It couldn't go back to his father. His father heard him last time he saw him. He did have his friend and his brother, the Crying Child and Michael Afton. So the mimic suited up in his lion suit to go and get Crying Child for help. Once he arrived at the house, he started throwing rocks at the Crying Child's window until it eventually broke, and the Crying Child peeked his head out the window in fear. To the Crying Child's surprise, it saw a yellow animatronic in the woods, signaling it to follow him because he needed help. The Crying Child followed this yellow animatronic, not knowing exactly what it was due to the rainy and dark night to Fredbear's location. The mimic then showed the Crying Child Charlotte's body, being held by the marionette. The Crying Child, now traumatized, ran back home and told his father, who was now furious that he ran off. For this disobedience, William subjected the Crying Child to his nightmarish experiments, with the Crying Child viewing this yellow animatronic suit as Fredbear. So within this experiment, the yellow suit that is a lion was now Nightmare Fredbear, tormenting the Crying Child, with the mimic having no help and watching his sister die due to William Afton, now swearing revenge on just not his own father now, but William Afton too, following them wherever they went. That is the story of Midnight Motorist. Okay, so there are some issues with this story. First is the mimic seeing the murder take place and knowing it was William. The only reason this is an issue is because William is typically depicted as purple when he's in the shadows and doing evil things. So in this case, it might have been hard for the mimic to see him, especially in the rain at night. Next is how the mimic got to the house before William. I mean, William was obviously going straight home after this, so the fact that this thing is faster than a car on a highway that's speeding is completely beyond me. Then there's Crying Child and the Nightmare Experiments. As of right now, we don't really know who truly experienced them. So for now, my theory is that the Crying Child is the one who experienced them physically. Then of course, if you believe in the books being in the games, then Henry isn't the creator of the mimic, which could take apart this theory. Though it is completely possible that other workers' kids knew the Aftons and Emily's kids. Otherwise, I can't think of any other issues with the story. Let me know if there's anything that I missed. Though, let's get into my final thoughts. Okay, I generally think this is my best theory yet. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I'm so happy to have it out now. There are a lot of things in this that made a lot of sense, such as why the mimic would go to the Crying Child and how he would have seen the murder happen, as well as the lion suit matching the footprint and possible design of Nightmare Fredbear if the Crying Child saw this lion suit as Fredbear. So overall, I'd give this theory a solid 8 out of 10. It does have its issues, but man does it sound good. Though, let me know what you think, as you're the final judge. Just remember to keep it kind, calm, respectful, and that's just a theory. Alrighty, and that is all that I had for this episode. So my god, this video actually took a lot longer than I thought. This is actually the first ever video that's been purely recorded and edited on PC. If you don't know, I've been on PS5 my whole entire time on YouTube until recently, and well, this is the first ever theory video I have ever done purely on PC. So let me know how you think of it. I know my mic probably doesn't sound the best. I'm going to be dinking with it here and there, but I just, I'm so happy. Again, thank you so much to Cyanide. I was debating if I wanted someone to come on to do kind of like the recap, because it's like, I know I've been doing a lot of collaborations as of late, but Cyanide is someone that I was watching during my surgeries. I remember when they first released their first ever video on Midnight Motorist, and if I remember correctly, I think I was downstairs just going through it before I had my first emergency surgery. Like, it was probably a week before that, and I watched it and I absolutely loved it, and I was thinking to myself, I'd love to work with this person if and when I get better. So absolute joy to work with. He got his stuff done really quick. I mean, he got it done in like, I don't know, 2-3 days. It was insane. But again, thank you so much to Cyanide. Absolute joy to work with. Please go check out his YouTube channel. He makes FNAF theory videos as well. It's an absolute joy to watch. Really well made stuff. So please go check out his stuff. Otherwise, yeah, just please give me feedback on this, because again, first ever time purely recording and editing on my PC. So yeah, otherwise, I'm hoping that sometime this month or next month, not only do I get back into live streaming on Twitch, I start releasing maybe 2 theory videos a month, since I'm planning on finishing up college first semester pretty quick here. So yeah, if I can, I will let you all know on my YouTube community posts and my Discord and my Twitter. So check those all out, and I'll keep you posted on how that's going. And yeah, that's really all that I have for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like, subscribe button, as we do have a goal of 2,000 subs by the end of the month. While you're at it, comment down below really anything in the whole wide world. Just remember to keep it kind, calm, respectful, and that's just a theory. Share this video with your friends and family, as every single bit helps. And well, without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed. Have a great day, stay safe, and peace out.